This is the Brazoria County Minute. And now the host of the Brazoria County Minute, Christen English.
Hi, I'm Christen English, and I'm a local real estate agent and the host of Brazoria County Minute. And we are at the Alden Dow Museum today. And my guest here, Fred Ortiz, was just sharing with me a quote by Alden Dow. Do you want to share that?
Sure. It's billions of people, trillions of ideas. Each one is uniquely distinctive.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Brazoria County. Been here, my whole life. Lived in Pearland until about 2008 when I came to the City of Enchantment as the EMS director and stayed on board there until 2019. I have a son who's 33 years old. I'm going to go visit him in Chicago. He's starting his master's program at the University of Chicago. So,
what do you do with your life now?
Well, I own Help Incorporated. I own Help Home Hospice and Palliative Care, and I am a co-owner of Help Home In-Home Primary Care.
So the reason I wanted to have you come today and us just kind of have a conversation was about, elderly care and preparing for elderly care, because with your background, like you've just talked to us about, you definitely have some insight on that, right?
Yes.
And, I want to share a little of my personal experience. For me personally, I was, in this role of like having teenagers, young adults. That was in that phase of life. And then kind of snuck up on me elderly care of my father-in-law. And I was not prepared for it. I didn't know what it would be like. We saw the need unfolding quickly. We jumped in and just had to kind of wing it. And so you and I have had some discussions about how can you keep that from sneaking up on you from the perspective of the potential caretaker in the future, or the perspective of someone who's trying to plan for their own care in the future to make it easier for their potential caretaker.
Yeah, I think it's very dynamic. I think there's so many different parts to that. But number one is that regardless, we're going to need care at some point. Mm-hmm. So whether we plan for it or it sneaks up on it, there are solutions. And both, I like to say that it's just for a season, as you got to see.
Right.
It's not forever. So being a caregiver for your parent, it's a season. And we go through seasons in life, and as parents, as caregivers for our parents. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that lasts forever, and you don't want to live in regret that I didn't do the best that I could, or
right.
What if I would have done this, or what, and so we try to help people in that season with everything they need, resources available, whether it's, just relieving you with some what we call respite care to give you a break, and we'll come in for a weekend and do the caregiving for you, all the way up into 24/7 care in their home, because that's where they want to be, and they don't want to be a burden on you. So we get to see the complete, how dynamic this is. With every family is different. Every family has a different need. Every family goes through, man, I should have done this, or I didn't think of this. And we have the staff and the resources in our community to help people be prepared, or when they're not prepared, to get them through the season, the way it is right now.
Okay. So, we had talked about that. I think for the first time, maybe in a very long time in history or ever, we have this situation where people are finding themselves still raising a family while all of a sudden caring for elderly as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we definitely have seen that gap, that change in that gap, where it used to be a family had finished raising their children, and now they could focus on their parents. Mm-hmm. And now they're in the middle of raising their children.
People are getting married at a later age. They're having children at a later age.
Children later. Early on, people had children 17, 18 years old on the regular, and there was a huge gap in that season. So then their children got married and had, and so it just worked that way. And now people have waited, they've planned on having children. Everybody's hyper focused on planning, which is great. Yeah. But what they didn't plan on is catching up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden their parents are needing help. And a lot of times parents don't want to talk about, I need help.
Or even admit to themselves.
They don't want to admit it. And then you as a in-law or the child, I don't want to say child, but the adult child,
right.
You don't really want it to be overstepping your bounds either. So there's a line somewhere in the middle that we got to start having these conversations.
Right.
We've got to open up this dialogue. What do you want? I realize that you may not want it right now or think you need it or need it right now, but let's start having the conversation and preparing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that goes with that.
Yeah, and I think that that's the hardest thing to do is kind of figure out when to step in and when to step out. And I know like in my situation, and I've seen it with some other people too, when I've talked with them, is they're like the need would kind of sneak up on you, and then all of a sudden you're jumping in, you're doing all these things, and then maybe maybe that little bit of a health crisis or a little bit of downward, season or whatever gets better. And then you realize like, oh, I need to pull back a little bit because these people that even though they're getting older and they're losing some of their ability to do things on their own, they still really want to do the things that they can. And so then you kind of have to step back and then you have to step in again. And it's this kind of a dance of being respectful, letting them still have their dignity and do the things that they can do for themselves, but then being able to quickly step in when you realize like, oh, today's not a good day or it's not a good week or there's a new crisis, right?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I'm 55 years old, I'd like to say thank you to Luby's because I'm considered a senior there and I get a senior discount.
Do you eat dinner at like 3 p.m.?
No, I don't. but it's amazing. Most of the men who I hang out with are in their mid 70s to 80s, and they're very active. One of them owns a horse ranch, and most of them own a ranch somewhere, or they're very active. They don't appear to be seniors and have any needs today. Mm-hmm. So it's incredible when you look at this group who need absolutely no help, but they're starting to realize there's things they can't do. There's things that I can't do. I can't jump in the back of my Ford F-250 outside like I used to. And I have to be very careful considering getting out of it. So and I never even thought about those things.
Right.
When you're in your 30s and 40s,
it sneaks up on you, right?
You don't think about those things at all. Picking up a refrigerator and loading it in the back of your truck or a washer or dryer. Then all of a sudden, like, now I got to call a friend,
Right.
You have to phone. Those things happen so quickly that you don't really realize it. And that's just the progression of time. There are things like a stroke or a heart attack
that happens suddenly.
Or a fall where you break your hip that change people's lives, and all
just
of a sudden
overnight,
everyone has to pivot. Mm-hmm. And this is really where companies like Help Inc. can come in and make a difference.
Right.
But really the most important thing is family caregivers first. And for family caregivers to know that we're a resource and we're not going to charge you to come in and give you advice on how to move forward and how to get things started. We can come in and do a home assessment. Mm-hmm. How do you make your home safe?
Yeah.
For someone who's now got a walker in the home, and just little things like getting rid of throw rugs, putting lights near the stairs, and maybe quit using stairs, putting grab bars in the house. We can do all these things. We can send you to some place that can do all these things, modifying your restroom, because we don't think about those things when we're younger, and you wind up living in that same house and you become a senior. It's a lot harder getting over that bathtub. So, we can have doors cut into bathtubs and sealed so you can walk right through.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things that most people
and that helps
never
people
think
be
of.
able to maintain their independence longer.
Yes.
Whenever you can set up their current living situation, that just makes it easier for them. Or when they're recovering from, like you said, a stroke, a fall, if they're going to get back on their feet,
Yes.
just some temporary help and get them set up to be safer in the future. So, these things that you offer, obviously, they come with a price, right? So let's talk a little bit about financial planning for your future and for your future of your parents.
That's an important thing to talk about. And there are a lot of people who grew up in this area and they were offered long-term care insurance. It's a great program. It can help protect your wealth. It's very difficult if you're already 70 years old and trying to purchase. And I've got some friends who have gone in and purchased, but a buy-in for a program like that's like $150,000. Where when you're 25 years old, when you absolutely don't think that you need it, is when you can buy it at its absolute cheapest.
Yeah.
And you hold on to it your whole life. It may be $25, $50 a month. And you think, well, I don't need that. I'm never going to need this. And then it sneaks up on you. And it is expensive. You know, the clientele.
But if you start out young, when you first start your career, if your job offers some sort of insurance, or there's an extra insurance you could buy and it's cheap. It's like I say around here with flood insurance, if just because maybe your mortgage company doesn't require it where you live, it's still cheap enough to buy it. You might as well.
It's worth having no matter what. It's a peace of mind that comes with that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we never use it. And so there are, and we don't sell insurance, but I can tell you that there are some incredible programs that are life insurance with the long-term care.
Yeah.
So you can use it however you need to use it. They're hybrid programs, and there's people here in town who sell those programs. You know, and
maybe we can share some of that information in the description later when we release the
that'd
podcast.
Be great.
So,
but there are people here who specialize in that. We have a lot of these people who do wealth management who send us their clients because they know we're going to do the absolute best that we can in the least amount of time we need to be in the home. We don't want to be there if we don't need to be there. And we, some people think they need 24-hour care. Well, why do you need 24-hour care? Can we do this in 12 hours? Can we do it in 8 hours? And this is going to help you preserve your wealth for a lot longer as you continue to either get better or just need us there more, 24/7 as time goes on.
And I like how you brought up a couple of times about preserving your wealth. I mean, if you've spent, your life being mindful of the future and you planned and maybe you have a nest egg or something you want to leave for your children, you don't, I've seen it happen to where people end up using everything that they have, even having to sell their properties or sign their properties over to, is it the state that
they do
you have
like
to
reverse mortgages and people
or like just to be, if you need a nursing home, like you have to basically sign your house over if you don't have the funds. So you don't want to end up using, everything that you've worked for to go back into your care as a person in need when you're older. And so I like how you say protecting that. So you do have something to leave for your family, or you do, whatever your plans were, it doesn't go into your care because it can get expensive. And another way that you and I've talked about protecting your wealth is from scammers.
Yes.
They love to prey on the elderly or people who just don't quite understand how things work. They're still, the way that things happen in our society changes so quickly as far as like, the way that you can transfer money and the way that people can get your information. It's always, these scammers are ahead of the game all the time.
They are, and it's so important. This is not just for seniors. I mean, this is for me.
We could all
children.
We could all fall prey to this. Absolutely.
I've gotten emails that look like they came out of my own company, and they're just wanting you to click on something. And as soon as you click on it, and I won't click anything. I always send it to my IT department. It's like, is this legit? What is this?
Because some stuff looks really real. I mean, even like on social media, anything that kind of looks like a scam, I won't open. But there was at one point I did click on something that looked so real, and immediately as I opened it, I was like, "Oop, that's not legit." But they're good. That's their job is to fool us, right?
If they would just spend their time doing something constructive, something good for society, it'd be amazing. But I have a good friend of mine here locally who got scammed and emptied out his bank account, and he was retired. And so thank God it didn't hit his retirement, but it took everything out of his savings account, and he had to go back and take a job here locally. And it's sad. It's heartbreaking to think that people are preying on the people who built this country and worked so hard. Our parents, our friends are now the ones being scammed out of their wealth. And man, I'm not the guy to tell you how to protect that, but if I could say one thing is don't click on anything anymore. Unless it's from your own family
and
member.
I think for us, at whatever age you are, it's important to just take your time, be aware, educate yourself on, it doesn't hurt to like say, hold on a second, I'm not sure about this. Let me just call my bank directly, or let me go in there. There's steps you can take, and just making sure we relay that to every member of our family, from our children to our parents, and those are things that we can talk about. I mean, these kind of conversations people avoid having because they might not be fun or they might be uncomfortable. Right. But it's, I just want to encourage people to have those conversations, know those things. And there's planning, like you and I had talked about, maybe having a notebook, or you can purchase on Amazon books where you can put down passwords and bank account information and all of these things that, let's just say you suddenly were incapacitated. What kinds of things would your family members need to know to be able to help you and access things for you?
Yeah, it's very important that you have that set up. I have everything on a jump drive. My general manager and my attorney know where they are, and my son, they know where they are. I'm not going to say it here where they are, but they know how to access everything.
You got to watch out for those scammers.
Exactly. You just never know when it's
Right.
going to happen. So I have everything prepared, and preparing doesn't make me more susceptible to dying. Unfortunately, I'm going to die. I'm
Right.
going to get old, or I'm going to die, one or the other. And preparing for those things doesn't make me more susceptible to it. It makes me prepared. It makes it to where I'm doing a justice to my son and my grandchildren, rather than creating a problem for them once it happens. And there's other things that we haven't even talked about, and I don't know if this is the segment to do it, but there's things called living wills, and there are advanced directives, and there's DNRs. Easiest way to look into these things is just go to the Texas Department of State Health Services and click on all those things I just said.
Right.
And you can find out what they're about. I don't think everyone understands what a DNR is.
Yeah, I actually had someone over the weekend ask me about that, and I was like, you know what?
Wait till you see
I don't
this
have an
podcast.
answer for that, but I'm going to talk about it with Fred.
Yes. So I'll give you an example, and this is a war story. I don't like to get into war stories, but we had a patient here in Lake Jackson who was in cardiac arrest, and we arrived and we resuscitated him. He was having a heart attack, went into cardiac arrest. So he was dead upon our arrival, clinically dead. We resuscitated him, got him to the hospital, had a stent put in. He's probably still alive today as far as I know. I mean, it was, but that man had a DNR. Had they presented the DNR to us, we would not have performed CPR on him, and he wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So understanding the difference, an out-of-hospital DNR is great if you're terminal, if you know that, I really don't want anything. If my mom's 90 years old and they do chest compressions, they're going to completely destroy her chest. Mm-hmm. But if you're 65 years old, you may want somebody to do CPR on you.
Right.
And,
Right.
go on and have another 15, 20 years worth of life. Where advanced directives gives you more of a direct, hey, look, in the event this happens, yes, please do CPR on me, but don't keep me on a ventilator. And those are conversations to have with your doctor, your attorney, your family, and make sure that everybody understands what those things look like.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because going back to saying like we don't like thinking about those things or having those types of conversations because it makes us think about something that we don't want to think about. We don't want to think about, medical crises or, getting sick or dying or anything like that, right? But if we look at it more the perspective of like, hey, let's have a conversation, let's prepare for it, then we can put it on the back burner and go on with our living with the peace of mind that we've already planned for this. And, I do want to say that you can plan for a lot of things and then stuff is still going to come up. Nothing will ever be perfect.
Exactly.
In my business, I've seen so many times where people have tried to plan for their estate and all of that. And then we go to prepare to sell the house and there's still something that needs to be done or wasn't done correctly. And people will get frustrated and think, they'll be like, I tried to do everything right, or they were trying to do, and it wasn't that they were wrong. It's just, there's so many, dynamics, but just knowing that you at least put some things in place. You got some things started. It's going to be less for your family to worry about. And then just go on with your life. Just back burner it and keep on going living.
Yeah. And these things are always changeable too. You may think of something that you didn't think of at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's go back and revisit this.
Right.
Because this little dynamic has changed. Or maybe they've sold off a piece of property for a different reason. They've gotten into a smaller home, which makes sense a lot of times. A lot of times people are in huge homes and it's way too much for them. But, if you're wealthy and you can manage that, that's great. If you're me, you might want to move into a little one bedroom.
Yeah, downsize
and just
and
downsize. Do what makes sense. Having a smaller yard to deal with, different things like that. Not having it upstairs. A lot of people have to get away from that 2-story, 3-story home and move into a one-story. And it just makes sense. So, but all of those things will come with time, and people can, again, be fluid, make those changes, and move on.
Yeah. No, I like that idea of being fluid. And, one thing that I've noticed, going back to kind of like my business of real estate, is families moving in together, and that also can solve some of the issue with as you're aging. Let's say you do want to downsize, and so maybe buying. Talking about multi-generational, like you're dealing with raising children while also,
Yes.
Dealing with aging parents. Some things that I've seen people do is, they're even designing homes now where they have like an in-guest house suite or whatever inside the house.
Yes.
And so you can have your parents who are starting to age move in there, still maybe have their own entrance, have a lot of independent still, but being close to you, but they could also help out, be part of the raising of the
Yes.
kids. And then you are more aware when they do have an issue, because they're right there with you.
Yeah.
You don't realize that, like, wait, I haven't talked to mom or dad for a couple of days because I've been so busy going to soccer practice and dance class and picking up kids from school that,
Yes.
I need to check on them. And maybe they were having a problem, but they didn't want to bother you. But if you're there, so that solves a lot of, that can solve a lot of problems right there. And I love how we're being much more open-minded to multi-generational living, because there's so many ways that can benefit families.
Absolutely. I have a friend of mine who's doing that right now. She and her parents are both selling their homes, and they're buying a home that kind of matches exactly what you're
I've helped several clients with that.
And, they have a single kitchen, but they have their own living rooms on one side, but again, can still be there to help with their grandchildren, be a part of raising them. But she's not worried about them cooking anymore and doing those kinds of things. Shopping, and a lot of the things that we just take for granted that we just go out and do, they get harder as you get older, and you start to make some mistakes, and then you feel bad. And the last thing you want somebody to do is start to feel like, man, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
Independence is a huge thing.
And then they're afraid to ask for help. They don't want to be a
They don't wanna
burden.
be a burden.
So many of the elderly people that I've spoken with, they're so afraid to be a burden, and that's one thing, like I would tell some of the ones that I've talked to is, don't see it as a burden, because I know that, even as one who helped care for elderly, it's kind of an honor, it really is, because they've done for you, and you want to give back, and you want to do for them because they've cared for you and they've loved you, and it's not a burden,
Yeah. And everyone, there is no cookie cutter way of doing this. That's the one thing I tell you. When we first visit with a family, we tell everyone, we're not for everyone.
Yeah.
We do not have a cookie cutter way of doing anything. So everyone, we assess what they have. How can we help? Maybe you don't even need our help. Maybe we just need some of our products, and we can stay out of your house a little longer. But I think it's important to understand that, it's not a burden. We don't want to be a burden. I think about my son having to take care of me, and I think, boy, have I done everything right? Does he know what I need? When I get older, I'm not even old. I feel like I'm 30 years old, 25. But I also know it's not true, because of the way I get out of bed now.
Yeah, and
sooner
not being
we
able
need
to
help.
get out of your truck.
Yeah, that's the one. I think maybe I just need to get a smaller truck. Maybe I got too big a truck. I don't
Talk
have
about downsizing.
and I have considered it this year. But there's so many things when we look at the family dynamic. They're not the same in every home.
No, not every family, it's possible for them to live in a multi-generational home.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. And I like that. And, is there any like resources in our community where people can get together and kind of like share their experiences? Because I know what helped me is just talking to some people who had been in my position when I found myself, unexpectedly in it. Being able to share, like, oh, here's a resource. Right. I use this when I experience this, or sometimes just like some moral support, like, I know it's hard and I know it's difficult, or maybe, some things to think about, helping me plan. So are there any resources like that here?
Jackie Oldham is my general manager, and we've been working on a resource book, and that is a group like I'm currently attending a grief share group to kind of, I sent a lot of people to it and I had no idea what it was about. So I said, well, I'm going to attend it.
Oh, yeah, that's
Because
good.
I'm constantly sending people and I really want to know what they're getting into. And I think something like this where people can just sit and talk and have a cup of coffee and discuss, hey, it's almost like, soccer moms getting together, but it's really important. Like, what can we do? What are you doing? How are you handling this? Those things are so important. The one thing I want to say about all of it is you don't want to live in regret.
Right.
When I can look at my mother passing away, and I think the most beautiful thing is the Saturday before she had her stroke, I was at her home, hung out there with her for hours. It was a great time. My mom was completely healthy, driving. She's 84 years old, just an incredible woman. And the following Saturday, she was at a birthday party for one of her grandchildren, which she has a lot of them. And she had a stroke, and a week later, she passed away. So she lived her life to the fullest, and we were all there, and we were there the day hospice took her off the ventilator, and we were all there when she passed away. So I think my whole family can live with saying, man, we didn't have regret.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to spend time to, you get busy, and they don't want to say, hey, I need help. My mom would never say I need help.
Right.
But, you just kind of know where she was at that point. But the fact that she was still driving and doing everything, it was amazing. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
Not everybody goes strong like that to the end. And
I think that's how we all want to be, but that's
sure,
it's not always what happens. Yeah.
You have people who get sick, and a long part of that season of being a child is in a caregiving season, and trying to understand it is just for a season. So it gets frustrating sometimes. It gets hard, especially if they have dementia. That's a whole nother part of this, where we have to come in and we actually just teach family members that you don't want to argue with them. Let's redirect them. Redirect. And you start arguing with somebody who has dementia, it's a losing battle.
Trying to help them.
You're going to get frustrated.
Remember,
They're frustrated.
Yeah.
Just redirect them. Move on to something else.
Right.
Sometimes you just need a break, and that's okay. Take a week break. Get out of the house. Those are the times where a company like Helping can come in and just give you some respite care. There's companies in town where you could take your parent for a weekend to one of the assisted living facilities, and Medicare will pay for that.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yes,
that's good.
to give you a break, because we need, as caregivers, we need breaks.
Absolutely.
And
don't be ashamed of that.
No, it is work. Especially when you're in that family member who's caring for teenagers, and they need to get everywhere, especially right before they're driving.
They have more plans than anybody.
They do, and you got to get them everywhere, and then you still have to take care of them. And so, these are places where we fit in well to give you a break. And everyone wants to be independent as long as they can, but we have to be honest with ourselves. There comes a point where we have to say, I need help.
Yeah.
People who are listening to this are saying, yeah, Fred, you're never going to say that. But I understand that there comes a time when you have to say, I need
absolutely.
help.
And we even need to know that at younger ages, we can't always do everything.
Yeah.
That's always hard for me, is to ask for help.
For people who are out there helping everyone else, I see it all the time. People talk about me all the time. It's like, yeah, we're the last ones to ask for help.
Well, sometimes it's even hard to recognize that we even need help.
Yeah.
I'll have people say, do you want me to help you with that? And I'll say, oh, I don't need help with that. And then I'll think about it for a little bit, like, actually, I could have used some help, but it didn't occur to me that I might need help.
Yeah, there's a whole country song that says you find out who your friends are. Somebody's going to stop everything. Well, Sunday I had a phone call from a friend of mine, and he was just asking, Fred, do you know anybody who could pick up someone in a wheelchair van and take them back home? I was like, well, I do. Who is it? It's my dad. I was like, well, where is he? He told me where he is. So I was like, I'll be there at 2:30. So I went and picked him up. And his dad was telling me the story about how you know who your friends are.
Yeah.
It's somebody you can just pick up and they're going to stop doing what they're going to do. So when people, this is a lesson beyond for seniors. It's a lesson for us who are in this age of we're not going to ask for help, right? But sometimes you have to. Sometimes you don't have that resource. And man, it's a blessing for somebody else to help you.
Yeah. Saying like, don't steal someone else's blessing.
Don't steal their blessing.
Yeah. Because, if we like to help people, maybe other people like to help us.
Yeah. Somebody told me the other day, you're always stealing everybody's blessing because you don't let us do anything. You're right. I'm going to do it different. We cook a lot for the Salvation Army, and I just tell them, show up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we want to be more a part. We want to be a part in the cooking part and everything else. And so somebody told me, he's like, quit stealing our blessings. I was like, all right, that hits home, you know?
Yeah,
I get it.
When you think about it, changes your perspective for sure.
It does.
Is there anything else that you can think of that just you want to share or make known before we wrap this up?
You know, there's not one solution. There's not. There's so many different. It is a dynamic thing, as we've spoken about. I think understanding, you know, visiting us before you need us. Just have a consultation. It doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
You know,
I actually like that.
Yeah. Let us come to your home and see what we're working with, who we're working with, and how. One of the things that we pride ourselves in, and I'm sure everybody who does what we do does the same thing, but I'm sure they do, but I hope they do, is that we try to match the best caregivers with that particular family member. May not be the best for the daughter, but it's the best for that family member because they're the ones who need it. I've got friends of mine in Pearland. We're caring for the mother right now. And it's such an honor to actually know and to have conversations with them saying, thank you so much that, you know, for all the way in Pearland that we're making a difference in someone's life who's, you know, been high school, you know, went to high school together and we're caring for them. And it all started with conversations over a year before we finally did services in the home, but helping them get a bed, helping them, you know, get her to the right floor and talk about, hey, these are the things that she needs. And eventually it got to the point where it was too much for them. And we started stepping in and they're so grateful. Next thing you know, we're getting more hours because they're seeing how, oh my goodness, now mom's walking again. Well, yeah, it's hard for you to do this when this isn't what you do. You know, and so it's been a blessing to help people and do those assessments, walk into people's homes, and whether they use our services or not, the fact that we've helped them and that we try to prepare them to understand, no matter what it is, it's just another season.
Yeah. And that's such a good thing to remember. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today and talking with me about this. And I hope that it's been helpful to someone out there.
I hope so as well. And thank you for the invitation.
Okay.
The Brazoria County Minute is brought to you by BeRemembered.us. Tell your story. Be remembered.